What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 best older Samsung Galaxy flagship phones that you should check out here. So let's go ahead and get started with the Galaxy Note 10 and Note 10 Plus. The Note 10 Plus you can get is going to be a little bit more expensive, but obviously if you want that, it's going to be bigger and just have slightly better specs as well. But I have the Note 10 and I really enjoy this phone, especially for people who have smaller hands. I think this is a great buy. It's 380 bucks right now. I have all the links down below. It's got an aluminum frame, one of my favorite designs, a psychedelic, a sort of shifting color design. It still looks really beautiful. IP68 dust and water resistant on here as well. You do have the stylus support, of course. I think no phones are going to be the best for anybody who does digital artwork on their phone, or if you just want to navigate with the stylus. I think the features and everything are just, superior than what else is out there. You do have a 6.3-inch dynamic AMOLED display at HDR10 Plus. It is a 1080p panel for 140 ppi with a 90% screen to body ratio. Absolutely beautiful display. I really enjoy looking at the display colors. The punch hole, it does have a slight curve to it as well, so I have no issues with the Note 10's display. It's a really nice display. This phone is running Android 11 with the Snapdragon 855 and the Adreno 640 on here. Basically, this phone is still a beast at gaming. I was even able to play Fortnite at 60 FPS, so check out the gaming tests I have on these phones. And yeah, so as far as gaming performance, you're gonna have a great time there. This phone has no SD card support, but 256 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM is on this phone, so I think that's enough for most people. You do have on here stereo speakers, no headphone jack, NFC, a fingerprint scanner under the display, and Samsung desktop support is supported on this device. And this phone also has some pretty good cameras, a triple camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide, as well as 4K video, 30 or 60. And then you have a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K as well. So image quality on here is pretty good. I think a lot of these older flagships, for the price that you're paying, you're still getting excellent cameras with these guys. As you can see, very good detail, good dynamic range. Overall, I had zero complaints with image quality on here. Now, this phone does have a 3500 milliamp battery with 25-watt charging, with wireless charging at 12 watts and reverse wireless charging at 4.5 watts. Basically, this phone was able to do around 5 hours of screen on time. If you're a light user, you can probably squeeze 6 hours of screen on time. So battery life is just going to be decent on this phone. Nothing too crazy, but overall the Note 10 and Note 10 Plus is definitely a phone I would consider. Next is going to be the Galaxy S10 or the S10 Plus if you just want, again, the bigger version with slightly better specs. So the S10 is the one that I have, and I really like this device because it's super cheap at 240 bucks. So the price to spec ratio is really crazy on this guy. You have an aluminum frame on here, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant on here. Still has a really great design. Beautiful display on here. A dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 Plus at 6.1 inches. It's also a 1440p display, 554 the PPI, and the display is absolutely beautiful on here. Extremely sharp is one of my favorite things about it. You do have Android 11 with the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640 on here. Again, this is another phone that does a great job with gaming. So most games you can pretty much play at high settings. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. This phone does have stereo speakers, and the headphone jack is retained on this phone. So if you need a headphone jack, definitely check this one out. You also have NFC on this phone. The fingerprint scanner is under the display, as well as Samsung desktop support is on here too. This phone also has very good cameras, a triple camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide is on board, as well as 4K video is on board with a 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K as well, both at 60 frames per second. So overall, no issues with image quality on the S10. I thought the pictures came out perfectly fine. Very good detail. Again, better than what you're going to get for 240 bucks on most phones these days. So this phone also has 3400 milliamp battery with 15-watt charging. It does have wireless charging along with reverse wireless charging. Battery life is pretty good on this phone. Again, not anything too crazy, around 5 hours, 4 hours of screen on time. So it's just average battery life, but definitely you really get all the bells and whistles for the cheap with this phone, which is something that I really love. Next, I want to talk about the Samsung Galaxy S10e, which is probably my favorite phone on this list because it's super small, extremely comfortable to hold in the hand, and it's also, I believe, one of the cheapest phones on this list. It's around 200 bucks even right now, and it's still an excellent device here. We do have an aluminum frame, a glass back on here, IP68 dust and water resistant, a dynamic AMOLED display at HDR10 Plus at 5.8 inches. It's 1080p 438 for the PPI. Overall, still an excellent display. It's got the punch hole on it as well, so just zero issues. And display is completely flat on this as well. So you have Android 11 with the Snapdragon 855 Adreno 640. I have zero issues with this phone. I highly recommend only getting the Snapdragon version if you can. The performance is going to be better. You're not going to have heating problems and stuff like that, so I definitely would do that. You do have on here micro SD support, 128 gigs and 6 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM. You do have on here stereo speakers are still on board, super crispy sounding, very loud. You do have your headphone jack on board as well as NFC, and even Samsung was nice enough to throw in the Samsung desktop support too on the S10e, which is really awesome as well. This phone has one of my favorite implementations of the fingerprint scanner. It's on the side, and I think it works fantastic. It's very fast, very natural feeling. This phone also has great cameras, a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide with 4K video at 60 FPS with a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K as well. So overall image quality, again, for 200 bucks, you're getting an excellent camera phone here. So zero complaints, honestly, with any of these phones. I have no complaints with them as far as image quality wise. I think they all do such an excellent job here. You do have on here, I guess the one issue is kind of a smaller battery, a 3100 milliamp battery, 15-watt charging with wireless charging, and also reverse wireless charging is on here, so you can charge other devices with this phone. Basically, battery situation is going to be around like 4 hours of screen on time, which I know doesn't sound great, but it's pretty average for a compact phone of this size, so I really don't have an issue with that trade-off. So battery life, again, is going to be fine. Again, I'm a light user, so I'm not doing gaming stuff like that on my phone, so the 4 hours of screen on time, yes, you're going to have to put it on the charger, but overall, I think for the price that you're paying and all the features that you're getting, I think it's definitely still worth it. Next is the Samsung Galaxy S9 or the S9 Plus. Again, I would prefer getting the S9 Plus actually here, just because you get that secondary camera, but if you really want the smaller version of this phone, it's basically the same phone with just a smaller body here. But yeah, so I do like the S9 Plus here. It's aluminum frame, glass back on here, IP68 dust and water resistant as well. And overall, the hardware I still think looks really beautiful on here. It's got a Super AMOLED display at HDR10 at 6.2 inches. It's a full 1440p display, 529 for the PPI. I think the display is overall really beautiful on here, and this one does not have any type of notch or punch hole, which I think is really awesome. So everybody who's anti-notch and punch hole, you can definitely consider this. Now, this phone does run Android 10 with the Snapdragon 845 and Adreno 630. So basically, if you saw the gaming test, it can still play games pretty great. It plays games on like a kind of like a mid-ranger, depending on what the game is. Like for PUBG, it won't be able to do as good as the Snapdragon 855 chips. It won't be able to play at max settings and stuff like that, but overall gaming experience is still going to be pretty solid on this device. You do have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on the base model. You also have stereo speakers on this guy as well, which sound pretty good. The headphone jack is still retained on here, as well as NFC, and Samsung has the iris scanner on here, which is pretty cool. And then you have your physical fingerprint scanner on the back, which works great. You also still retain the Samsung desktop support on here too, and also the cameras on here are actually really good still. I was actually really surprised when I was taking photos. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto. So the only thing is really lacking is the ultra wide, I guess, these days. But you do have 4K video, 30 or 60 FPS, and 8 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 1440p. Overall image quality is still extremely solid on this guy, so I was really impressed, as you can see with the images. Very natural colors, very good detail. So I had zero issues with this phone's cameras. So you do have on here a 3500 milliamp battery with 15-watt charging with wireless charging as well. Again, battery life pretty average on here, around 5 hours of screen on time, which I think is decent for this size battery. So yeah, definitely check out the S9 Plus. It's still a great device. All right, last is going to be the Galaxy S21 Ultra. This is an awesome device. I was able to pick it up for $750, the Verizon version, on Amazon, but they go really quickly. And just, you know, a heads up, usually the ones for around 750 bucks, they're going to be locked. So that is something that you're going to have to deal with. But you can find these easily on eBay again for like 800 bucks. So I really do like these phones in the used refurbished marketplace. You have just a beast of a design. I think one of the best designs that came out last year. It's got an aluminum frame. It's got a glass back. It's a matte finish, IP68 dust and water resistant. Overall, just a beautiful phone. It is very heavy, but it feels super premium as well too. So we have a beautiful display, a 6.8-inch display. It's dynamic AMOLED, 120 Hz, HDR 10 plus, and 1500 nits peak brightness. It is a full 1440p display with 515 for the PPI. Just a beautiful display as far as colors and as far as the screen to bezel ratio and the punch hole. Just makes for a really nice immersive experience. This is running the Android 12 update, and the One UI 4 update has been really great to use. We also have the Snapdragon 888 on here and Adreno 660, so this is still going to be a very powerful phone. It's still one of the most powerful phones you can get for right now. And yeah, you will be able to play pretty much anything at max settings, no problem. So it just blows through anything. You also have 128 gigs or 256 gigs of internal storage. I actually got the 256 gig version with 12 gigs of RAM on here, so it's just a very smooth device for multitasking. And we also have very respectable stereo speakers, sound pretty good. Of course, no headphone jack. We do have NFC and all your bells and whistles with the under the display fingerprint sensor. Works very fast. Samsung desktop and wireless desktop support as well. And we also have on here one of the best camera setups of last year as well too, a quad camera setup, 108 megapixel standard, 10 megapixel periscope telephoto, 10 megapixel telephoto, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then 8K video at 24 frames, and then a 40 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. You're just getting absolutely phenomenal photos and video on the S21 Ultra. It does a really great job with color sign to detail. You have up to 100 times zoom on here as well too. Any type of photo you take on here, you're gonna really like. And this also has a macro mode too that, you know, uses the ultra wide. So I just think this is a phenomenal camera setup. And then to top it off, you have excellent battery life with a 5000 milliamp battery, 25 watt charging with wireless charging and reverse wireless charging as well. So the S21 Ultra is just a beast. So I would say go for it if you can find it at that price point. It's a really good buy. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.